it's not always the time to address or to try to respond to the question, why suffering? I have a very poignant example in my own life where my aunt was conveying to me some terrible suffering that she had been through, and I did jump in with some of my more abstract philosophical ideas. This was many years ago, and she listened to me patiently, and then she said, "Vince, that doesn't speak to me as a mother," which I have come to think was a very fair response, and I hope has helped me to listen a lot longer and to ask a lot more questions before I would think it would be even time to have a conversation about the question of why. And when I listen to events like this, I mean, one thing that's important to me is I think we need to say things like that are evil, that they're objectively evil, that they really are evil. And I hope that my Christian worldview and my understanding of God allows me to do that.
I mean, I see how that could easily be said of the Charlie Hebdo tragedy. In a sense, though, in what sense is a bin lorry crashing into people on the street at Christmas time evil? Is it simply just a tragic accident? I mean, do we ascribe evil in that case?
Sure. I think I would want to. I would want to use strong language there. I'd want to use strong language, and I think, from my Christian point of view, not to say that there aren't other ways of talking about this, but from my Christian point of view, each life is sacred. Each person is created in the image of God. Each person is loved by God. And so whatever explanation we give to the question of why, the fact that something sacred, a human person, has suffered or has been affected in that sort of way, I think we should say that that's evil. We should say that our starting point has to be that something is bad about that, and that's not ultimately what we should desire, and not ultimately what a God would want in the end.
Same question to you, Julian. When you are confronted with tragedies or people who are going through something, what's your response to them on a practical level?
Well, I mean, it's very difficult. I think it's very hard to say anything that can be of help to people. If you say people, it's going to be all right, for example, that can be so trite. I mean, often even, for a start, that's not really ever really true, actually. Things are never all right again for people when they've been through these things. Things can get okay again, but things are never the same. But also it can seem not credible at the time. And, I think that the most difficult thing, there's a kind of suffering of having to be around with someone who you love, who is suffering, and being unable to help them. Ultimately, I think all you can do is, be there for them. And it sounds so thin, but ultimately, that's the only thing you can do. They know that they're loved, that they have support, that you have their sympathy is with them, but you can't pretend you can take that pain away, and you can't pretend to explain it or justify it. And then people need, in their own time, to work through it in whatever way they do.
Do you ever go down the route as an atheist of trying to say that you're gonna see why this, there's a reason behind this? You just can't go down that route,
I don't think you can. And I think that's it's interesting how difficult it is. You say that people naturally ask why, and they do actually a lot of the time. And I'm always a bit baffled because I know it's possible to break that habit, because I think that if you get accustomed to a worldview in which you accept that things don't happen with an ultimate purpose, things just happen, you do stop asking why after a while, genuinely. So if I've been lucky so far. I haven't had a major disease, but I had a worrying diagnosis. Well, worrying symptoms which weren't yet diagnosed. There's a potential of being something serious and life-threatening, and I didn't ask myself why me. I thought it happened to other people. Of course it could happen. I kind of expect at some stage something really nasty to happen. So you can get out of that way of thinking, but the default for people is to want to know why and to think there must be a reason. And if that's what people are thinking, it can be very hard to say there's no why, it just happens.
Sure.
Yeah. I just wanted to pick up on the importance of just being there with someone and affirm that. I think that's one of the things, from my Christian perspective, that's one of the things, and this is not a statement of its truth or its falsity, but it's one of the things I value about the Christian tradition in particular, is that if there's a God who actually has lived a human life and actually suffered and knows what suffering is, then for anyone who's suffering, I can say to them that they don't need to wonder whether there's someone who exists who understands what they're going through, or if there's someone who cares. And that's something that's attractive to me about my faith, that I don't think anyone ever has to go through suffering in isolation, and I can offer my faith and my God as someone who understands and who can be there amidst that. And I agree in a sense with what you said about it will never be all right. I want to be really careful, and I think you do too, to not say, well, it's not a big deal that you've gone through this terrible piece of suffering, or that's fine, but don't worry, you'll see eventually that that wasn't really evil, or anything along those lines. And yet at the same time, I hope that, because I do believe that there can be an afterlife, which can be
And you believe in that sense the why question is one that everyone should and can ask.
That it is one that we do naturally ask, which is not to say that we can't get to a point where we stop asking that in the same sort of regular way. But I had friends recently who went through a miscarriage, and for them that was quite devastating. The woman had to have surgery, lost a lot more blood than she should have. It was traumatic for them, and they are Christians, and they decided to name the baby Hope, because from their perspective, they really do believe that there's the possibility of being a family together with that child in heaven, which again is not an argument for the truth or the falsity of the Christian faith, but when we're talking about how do we respond to real life suffering, it's something I really value about my tradition, that I can call it evil, but I can also say that there is real hope. And at the same time, I can say there is always someone who knows what you've been through.
To watch the full debate on God and suffering, please visit premierchristianradio.com/unbelievable.